All right, greetings. So, turn up the video speed. You know, I don't want to end up like Prometheus being chained to some rocks, birds tearing out my guts every day because I dare to offend the economic gods. But like the title of the video says, $60 a month for rent, and basically you own the property, so it's really just a payment to society. Where am I going with this? Well, I'll show you the technique. It's more of a master's technique. You actually need to have your head together before you do something like this. And hey, Freedom Phil, like, subscribe, and always turn up the video speed. Just whatever speed I'm talking at, you can think far fast and comprehend far faster. Let's get into it. So it's like this. A lot of people, they're going to want to have a house, a normal house. And look, let's we're being real about it. The reason most of you have to get most of the stuff you ever wanted was because wifey poo wants it, girlfriend wants it. Was it Dave Chappelle or Chris Rock that said if a man could get laid living in a cardboard box, that's all the technology would be. That's all we would have aspired to because we wouldn't be doing any more than that. We do most of it for you. That's just the truth of it. And if you are a guy and you find a woman who actually has her head together, she's like, we don't need all that crap. By the way, that's gold. I don't care if she's a sub 5, but she has her head together. You might want to go with that. I'm just saying. Situation is like this. You can do the Asmongold special where you go out and save your money up and go buy a cheap house in some part of the Midwest or America. They're good houses. A lot of times it's just old people passed on. You can get them. But even better than that at times is because, like, even with this place, even with the taxes and insurance, I still got to pay about, I think, $1,800 to $2,000 a year between taxes and insurance for this place, not including utilities. That's part of the motivation to turn it into a rental because I don't want to pay any of that. I don't need a place this big. So if you're someone that's cool with the concept of a tiny home, or some cases you may have two pieces of property and you just do an RV. Like I was talking to an enlightened individual the other day, and she was saying, "Well, I get an RV and then have a little electric vehicle behind it, and then when I get to wherever I'm at, I can just plug in." And if you have your own piece of property, yeah, you may have to spend some money to do the plugins and all that. But in some cases, what about if you just had a gas pusher and you had your own solar system on top of your RV, your schoolie, or whatever? And for those that think, oh, I can never live in a van or a bus or anything like that, go take a look at some of these people's, their rigs, man. It's amazing. The wood, the craftsmanship. You're like, this looks really nice. It's like what you'd see on boats. I don't know if you've ever dealt with boat people, but some of the boats, you go inside there and you're like, you look at the craftsmanship and it's amazing. It's friggin' amazing. In the same way, you can do that with whatever home you're in. So if you got this cheap piece of property, so how do you get the property? Well, you're going to have to do the hero's journey like everybody else and live as cheap as possible, whether it's working two jobs or working one really good one, living super cheap. I often recommend OTR trucking because free rent, free utilities. No, you don't even really need a car. You make money for a few years, go buy a piece of property, buy yourself an RV and something, you're good. I would often recommend you would probably want to save and do some investing while you're still working. That way your money starts making you money and you'll never have to lift a finger again at that point. So you get the cheap piece of property. And what are you paying? It's raw property. You got like a parking pad there. I mean, the West Coast property out there. I mean, 500 for the taxes, 200 for HOA, and for that HOA, I get. And when I say 200, that's 200 per year, not 200 per month. So 500 per year, 200 per year. So divided up, that's $60 a month. But I get like beach rights. They're shellfish rights. I get shellfish rights. I don't know if you guys understand how cool that is when you can just walk out to your local beach. As long as the tides are right and there's no paralytic shellfish disease going on, you get a bucket full of food. And I don't know how much you've seen what oysters cost, but they ain't cheap when they're fresh. So basically, you get some good piece of land that has some benefits. Or maybe you don't want to deal with any HOA or any other people. You've got a piece of land up a road. You get off the main road, then you go up the dirt road, and then you got your gate. And then you're up there behind that gate. You've got your solar system. You've got your, whether it's a Starlink or you got some really good cell phone type of thing going on. You could be working from home out in the middle of nowhere, paying almost nothing to get by. And then people say, well, what are you going to do with the rest of your life and your time? I don't know. I mean, dude, I was one of the guys. And by the way, we should probably talk about this issue. You don't just go out to the woods like that. You go out to the woods and you got to learn to be by yourself first and foremost. Because the guy that taught me how to forage for wild edibles and all sorts of stuff back in the day, I'd lived in the woods for 4 years before that. I'd done van life when I was paying off the house, moving trash. And when he moved up to the middle of nowhere, he wasn't used to it. We were talking about it and he's like, well, how do you handle being alone for as long as you are? And I'm like, I've always got something to do. And he had this shell shock because he lived in the center of town, so everybody just kind of dropped by, have a cup of coffee, BS for a bit, and then everybody go about their way. So he didn't even have to lift a finger. And then when he moved up on the mountain, well, it turned out most people, they're not going to spend all this excess gas just to see you for no reason. If there's a party, people will show up. But yeah, you're going to be alone. Now, how do you handle that? Now, here's one thing to keep in mind. If you're lonely, you were probably bored before you were lonely. And if you're bored, get some hobbies, get some purpose, get some talents. Like get into something, get into some crafts. Like in my case, if someday when I settle down back on the West Coast, I will most likely build a giant elk fence to keep the elk out. And what I can forage in wild edibles around the general area, because it's the Northwest, there's food everywhere. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like a cold, wet jungle, but there's food everywhere. And then I could take that stuff inside the elk fence of my property and I could grow one hell of a garden. I mean, a ridiculously good garden there. So, all the really more advanced vegetables, maybe some fruits, all sorts of things. And then essentially, yeah, that becomes part of your life. You're like, okay, I've got, you got your shows that you want to watch on TV. Another pro tip, if you're going to pick an area that has decent airwave TV. I know it sounds weird, but sometimes life is like, it's crappy, it's rainy outside, you got the wood stove going, and I would even put a wood stove in an RV. I'm not telling you to do it. I said I've done it. Been there, done that. But you're hanging out, very much going on. Maybe you're playing a musical instrument. It really helps when a few shows come on. You got like Family Feud and Price is Right. You got some classic shows like some Star Trek or something. When I was in the Wasteland, I loved it. I had 50, 60 channels. And people are like, well, how do you handle being alone out there for that long? I've got too much going on. I've got content to watch. I've got radio shows, people, local radio people that are entertaining to listen to. I got a plan for the whole day that you're going to have to figure that part of yourself out before you ever live in the middle of nowhere. Because, people do get they get cabin fever. So if you get to the point where you're absolutely comfortable being you, and you don't need anybody else's validation or anything, and when you happen to hang out with people, cool, but if you don't have people around, no big deal, then you can do this. And so, yeah, you get out there, you get online, you look up areas, and you see, is there cheap property? Now, let's get into something you're really going to have to make sure to look for. What are the state laws and the county laws in the area you're at? As far as, and this is kind of weird, I know a lot of you could be a little queasy about this, but can you do a composting toilet? Could you do an incinerator toilet? If you can do a composting toilet, that's good. You could do a tank. A lot of places allow tanks. They're like, well, what do you mean? You have like a little drop tank that's on a trailer, and you just, every once in a while, you go to town and deal with it. But if you can get away with, just having, in the case of the property I got out west, it turns out there's actually a privy there, a legally sanctioned privy. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, what? So I don't have to put in a septic. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a composting toilet, and then I'm just going to, for my gray water, I'll use biocompatible soap, which is basically plant food, and maybe a little white vinegar. And that'll clean things just fine. If I need to do something major, maybe I'll go to town. If I, when you got laundry that's just too big for your laundry machine, so you go to the mat for that reason. But yeah, I mean, totally, I'll be all over that. So you want to make sure your property has your county is fair with that. And when you get in these counties, make sure you got it in writing that what you're doing was legal, just in case they try to change the laws, change this, change that, and try to screw you over. Make sure you have everything in writing. And then if they try to screw you over, you're like, hey, I expect to be grandfathered in because this was legal when we did this. And, it is a risk, but maybe put this in perspective. Those people in Seattle in that video I was watching, they're called DINKs, dual income earners, no children. They were paying $7,000 per month for their mortgage. Their lifestyle, their mortgage, all that. And that kind of makes sense. The cost of living in Seattle, the housing, the land, just for a regular little house. A place like this. I saw that and I'm like, you're insane. I mean, I would take a pay cut and go get that cheap piece of property where what your cost of living, your rent to society is, if you got HOA and you got taxes. So in my case, $60 per month. It's actually 59 or 58 point something, but $60 a month. Think about all the money you would save every year. And this is just the same type of thinking of why I tell people to drive truck. No rent, no utilities. They're just handing you piles of money, and there's always more work to be done because people always want more stuff. Yeah. I mean, why wouldn't you do that? Well, I mean, I want to be cool and accepted. And by the way, if you're still in that mindset, yeah, master technique. Just you might as well just go do the normie dance. Get screwed by your bills and then blame it all on society. Do the typical thing. It's not my fault. It's anybody but me. My whole life's decisions were made by anybody but me. I don't want to sound Nietzschean, but I am a very you can do it type of person. Also, when you screw up, sometimes you just need to look. It's like, here's how life really works. Go listen to that song, Margaritaville. At the beginning, it's some woman's fault. Middle of the song, maybe my fault. By the end of the song, it's my own damn fault. When you get to that point where you realize that most of the things that you dealt with in your life were a self-inflicted, my own damn fault problem. Yes, you evolve a little. You're like, okay, well, if it's my own damn fault, how about we stop making the bad, stupid decisions? But for those that have their game together, oh yeah, don't get screwed on paying too much in rent. And, like I said, retirement by 30 or 7 to 10 years, just because you had a hard start doesn't mean you can't have a great finish, you know? So, yeah, just get out there, look for cheap property, learn what the laws are to the area, make sure there's no, sort of environmental issues that have happened before, because you never know. You might want to look into the criminal background of the land. What if there was somebody cooking meth there? You never know. If you find something, if you find a deal that's a little too good to be believed, you really want to look at it to make sure first. The same thing if you're going to buy a cheap house in the Midwest, like an Asmongold special. Yeah, you want to check into that. You want to make sure you have the house tested. It's an investment in your future. But yeah, when I see all these people talking about the cost to live in and all that, and I look at some of these people that have built decent RVs, schoolies, tiny homes, and I'm like, yeah, why wouldn't you want to do that? Why wouldn't you want to have more freedom? One piece of property in the north, one piece of property in the south. You know, you get the best growing season all year. And then, maybe there's fishing, maybe there's hiking, maybe there's something you want, but it's your life to live. And this whole thing where I see people robbing themselves to be cool. Well, my attitude on a lot of those people, you can look down on me all you want, but hey, Ripozo, So y'all have a great day. It's Freedom Phil telling you, turn up the video speed, because if you made it through this whole video at regular speed, I don't know how you did it. So turn up the video speed because you can comprehend far faster than I can speak. Take it easy.